Despite its status as a global economic powerhouse, the United States relies heavily on imports in several critical areas for its continued success. From raw materials and energy to food, beverages, and skilled labor, the US economy is deeply dependent on foreign commerce. This has been the case for decades, with global trade serving as the foundation of the country's economic stability. However, President Donald Trump's America First stance has cast doubt on the dynamics of US imports. His administration took a strong position in favor of reducing dependence on foreign products, imposing tariffs and trade restrictions on both rivals and allies, including Canada, the European Union, and China. The goal was to shift the trade balance in favor of domestic production, appealing to nationalist sentiment while protecting American businesses. While these measures received support from those advocating for increased domestic manufacturing, they overlooked the complex interwoven nature of global commerce on which the US economy is built. The reality is that the United States relies on foreign imports for far more than just consumer goods. Essential resources such as crude oil, rare earth metals, and natural gas are imported from other nations to meet the country's energy demands and support critical industries such as technology and defense. Additionally, foreign talent, skilled labor, and innovative minds are crucial to maintaining the country's competitive edge in the global economy. One consequence of Trump's tariffs is that Canada, a major trading partner, is considering its own retaliatory measures. These could go well beyond counter-tariffs. Given Canada's key role in supplying energy and natural resources, its response could have a significant impact on the United States. For example, Canada may restrict its exports of oil and electricity, disrupting the American energy supply chain. Despite being the largest energy exporter to the US, Canada faced a potential 25% tax on its exports in 2024. That year, the United States imported $129.5 billion in energy from Canada, including oil, natural gas, electricity, and uranium. In response to these tariffs, Canada is exploring a range of countermeasures. Ontario, for example, is considering halting electricity exports to the United States, particularly to states like Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, which rely on Canadian power. Ontario supplies a significant share of New York's electricity, about 21% during peak hours. Cutting off these supplies could affect millions of American households and drive up energy costs, particularly during peak consumption seasons like winter and summer. Ontario is also contemplating other responses, such as banning US-made alcohol from its markets and tightening mineral regulations. Bourbon whiskey and American craft beer, both popular in Canadian markets, could be targeted. In 2022, American whiskey exports to Canada exceeded $154 million, with Ontario being the largest buyer. Restricting these imports would hurt American distilleries and brewers that depend on Canadian demand. On a larger scale, Canada is considering imposing tariffs on a wide range of American imports. This would be similar to its response in 2018, when it retaliated with $16.6 billion CAD, $12.6 billion USD in tariffs. The current targets include steel and aluminum products, agricultural goods such as pork, apples, and dairy, and key raw materials used in various US industries. Canada is the second largest supplier of critical minerals to the United States, including cobalt, nickel, and lithium, accounting for about 25% of US imports. These minerals are essential for manufacturing batteries, electric vehicles, and other technologies. Restricting or taxing these exports could cause major disruptions for US companies reliant on Canadian resources. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has also proposed a more drastic measure, banning electricity exports to the United States entirely. This could have a major impact on power grids in Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. In 2023, Ontario exported approximately 7,000 gigawatt-hours of electricity to the United States. New York alone imports 21% of its electricity from Ontario, highlighting Canada's crucial role in providing reliable energy to the US. Numerous locations. A disruption in this supply chain might result in volatility and increased prices for millions of American consumers. Canada is also considering excluding US corporations from competing on Canadian government contracts, which would impact areas such as construction, technology, and defense, where American firms have a major presence. With more than 200 billion Canadian dollars in government procurement spending each year, such a move would transfer contracts to local or other overseas providers. This would benefit not only American enterprises but also Canadian sectors and align with the country's Buy Canadian approach. In response to US concerns about illegal immigration and drug trafficking, Canada is contemplating increasing border security funding. Over 1 billion Canadian dollars might be allocated to improving surveillance, personnel, and the formation of a joint task force with US authorities. This policy would address US security concerns while demonstrating Canada's commitment to bilateral cooperation on common issues. Regarding energy imports, the United States continues to rely heavily on foreign suppliers despite increasing domestic energy production. Crude oil imports, notably from Canada, are essential to meeting the country's energy needs. In 2024, the United States imported over 6.1 million barrels of crude oil per day, with Canada accounting for roughly 67% of that total. The majority of this oil is transported via large pipelines such as the Keystone XL and the Enbridge Mainline, highlighting Canada's importance to the US energy supply. In addition to crude oil, the United States imports large quantities of refined petroleum products such as gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. These imports are especially critical for regions like the East Coast, which have limited refining capacity. Furthermore, the United States imports natural gas from Canada, which is essential for heating and power generation in the Northeast, particularly during the winter. Canada's natural gas exports, totaling 7.4 billion cubic feet per day, ensure a steady energy supply and price stability in the United States. In conclusion, while the America First strategy may seek to reduce reliance on foreign trade, the United States and its closest trading partners, such as Canada, are deeply interconnected. Trade restrictions, tariffs, and retaliatory measures could have far-reaching consequences, particularly in industries such as energy, technology, and defense, where cross-border trade is vital. In 2024, the United States imported approximately 38.92 terawatt-hours of electricity to meet growing energy demand and occasional domestic supply constraints. More than 95% of this electricity came from Canada, with hydropower being the dominant source, making it a reliable and environmentally friendly option. The remainder came from Mexico, which supplied energy to regions along the US-Mexico border. States like New York and Michigan were particularly reliant on Canadian electricity, with New York importing around 21% of its energy from Ontario. These imports were crucial during extreme weather events, preventing blackouts and ensuring grid stability when local power supplies were insufficient. Meanwhile, coal imports accounted for less than 1% of total US energy imports in 2024, with around 4 million short tons of coal arriving primarily from Colombia, Indonesia, and Australia. This coal was mainly used for industrial purposes such as steel production. Additionally, uranium imports were essential for fueling the United States' 93 nuclear reactors, which collectively generated around 20% of the country's electricity. In 2024, the US imported approximately 50 million pounds of uranium, primarily from Canada, Kazakhstan, and Australia. However, with the 2024 ban on Russian uranium imports, which previously supplied 27% of the enriched uranium used in US reactors, the US is now seeking alternative sources and increasing its focus on domestic uranium enrichment. Let's take a brief break. If you enjoy this content, we'd appreciate it if you could click the like button, as it helps us reach more viewers. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Regarding oil, Canada is now considering its response to anticipated US tariffs. One option under discussion regarding Canadian oil is to cease or reduce oil shipments to the United States, which could have far-reaching ramifications for both countries. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has proposed using energy as leverage, including stopping power exports to the United States, which may harm up to 1.5 million American consumers, particularly in energy-dependent regions such as Michigan and Wisconsin. However, Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith opposes reducing oil exports, stating that it would significantly affect Canada's economy, since Alberta is the largest producer of crude oil sent to the United States. Smith has warned that such a move would disrupt Canada's energy sector, resulting in job losses and economic chaos. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has advocated for a more cautious approach, including tariffs on US goods, such as steel and aluminum, to protect Canada's economy while avoiding further escalation of tensions. In response to these economic issues, Premier Ford called a snap election on February 27th, citing it as a chance to secure a mandate for dealing with US tariffs. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who is also a serious contender to succeed. Trudeau has threatened to retaliate against the US should the tariffs be implemented. He has emphasized that such tariffs might negatively impact both nations and advised Canada to seek new trading partners to lessen its dependency on the US market. Meanwhile, a grassroots movement emerged in Canada, with an Ottawa entrepreneur creating "Canada is not for sale" hats in response to former President Trump's tariff threats. These hats gained traction after Premier Ford wore one at a meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau, resulting in increased orders and sparking a national debate over Canada's economic sovereignty. Economically, the planned tariffs have contributed to a rise in the Canadian dollar, with the loonie increasing by 0.2% against the US dollar, suggesting investor anxiety about the tariffs' impact. Political unity in Canada has been striking, with provincial leaders from all political parties joining together to oppose the tariffs and support retaliatory measures. If Canada were to reduce oil shipments to the United States, the economic consequences would be severe for both countries. For the United States, it would disrupt energy supply chains, particularly in states such as Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, that rely on Canadian crude oil and electricity. These states would likely experience shortages and higher energy bills, with significant consequences for the US economy. For Canada, the economic toll would also be substantial. Crude oil exports are a major source of revenue, and a decline could hinder GDP growth, raise unemployment, and strain provincial budgets, particularly in Alberta. The political impact could also be considerable, damaging US-Canada relations and delaying trade discussions under the USMCA. Meanwhile, Mexico is taking its own retaliatory actions in response to US tariffs. A proposed 25% tariff aims to reduce migrant arrivals and the flow of synthetic fentanyl into the United States. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has stated that Mexico may impose taxes on US imports, further escalating tensions between the two countries. Mexico is also seeking ways to reduce its trade imbalance and boost its economy by increasing domestic production and attracting international investment. Initiatives like the Mex-Meo plan focus on expanding industries such as automotive and aerospace, reducing the country's reliance on imports. The economic repercussions of the planned US tariffs on Mexico could be severe, with estimates suggesting they could lead to the loss of approximately 400,000 US jobs, particularly in industries such as automobile manufacturing, which are deeply interconnected between the two nations. Finally, if Canada decides to cut off power exports to the United States, the consequences would be far-reaching for both countries. Canada is critical to the stability of the US energy system, especially in the Northeast and Midwest. Any reduction in electricity imports would lead to increased energy costs, supply constraints, and possibly even power outages. Rising energy rates could put a financial strain on US households, particularly in regions reliant on Canadian power. The disruption could also result in higher operational costs for businesses.